apologies sent through to me today. However, I'm aware that Councillor Bacar is on holiday and I've had no notification of any substitute to take her place. So I'm sure actually I was probably sent a chair script and there's lots of procedural stuff that I'm supposed to say. Do you really want me to do that, or can I just run through the agenda? Do you want me to be formal? Nobody's indicating anything, in which case I'll move on straight away to item number 1, which I've done. It's apologies for absence. Item number 2 is the minutes of the last meeting held on the 8th of June. Are we happy to take those as read, or does anyone have anything that they wanted to add to that?
No, happy to take as read. I was there.
We're all of us apart from Tony were there, so I'm happy with that. Lovely. Chair's announcements, the usual declaration of interest. You're reminded that you need to declare in respect of any business set out in the agenda, and it should be declared as either a disclosable pecuniary interest or declarable interest, and you're required to notify the chair of the nature of any interest declared at commencement of the relevant item on the agenda, etc. The next item 4, I have the SCF minutes, and I believe we're just going to sort of have a brief sort of summary of the minutes that we've been provided with. Debbie, got a hand up.
So, sorry, yeah, to interrupt. It was just to say I'm standing in for Dee because she's been delayed. Sorry to interrupt you. She will be joining the meeting a bit later, I think. So sorry about that.
That's fine. That's a valid interruption. I don't really mind interruptions, and I almost feel that I'd rather us keep this as open, as collaborative as possible. We don't need this to feel like a formal, stuffy meeting, because that'll hamper some of the conversations we might want to have in this space. Cool. So the SCF minutes, starting with the 1st of June. Who's going to take me through those? Anyone have anything to add or comment or note on these?
I was going to do a brief introduction, but it was very brief. It would just basically say a lot of it is duplicated in the HR update, which makes sense given we talk about HR issues in staff consultation forum. I'm just going to flag, I guess, a couple of things that probably don't come out of either of them. In relation to ways of working, we will be taking that to the senior manager group this week, so discussing that there. I mean, we've pretty much already implemented it in full anyway, in terms of in practice what's happened, just getting a formal document that looks nice and we can use in our recruitments. So we're taking that through senior manager group this week. And everything else I think is covered, but if there are any questions on the detail bits in there, happy to take them.
Lovely. So open to councillors and members of staff. Was there anything on those forum minutes that jumped out at you as something that you wanted to explore, discuss, give additional direction to Ian and senior management and HR on? No. Everybody seems to be quite content. In that case, I'll move on to Rebecca and your HR update.
Lovely, thank you, Chair. Okay, I'm just going to highlight some key points of interest for committee members from the information note. Firstly, 3.2, new ways of working. Our teams continue to develop how they work following the pandemic, and this is really about balancing the benefits of the face-to-face teamwork and collaboration and the benefits of remote working. Systems continue to be in place, and as Ian just mentioned, we have a document formalising what's already in place that will be discussed at Senior Managers Group tomorrow before being published. Moving on to 3.3, recruitment and retention. During the last JSCC, the committee requested some further detail on recruitment and retention, given that this will be an ongoing issue with the current employment market. So the table in the report shows data from May to July 2022 and May to July 2021. And we can see that the overall number of vacancies remains broadly the same, with an increase of apprentice posts this year. We've seen an increase in applicants for our apprentice posts and a reduction in applications for our regular posts. And I think this really reflects the current employment market. We've successfully filled 19 posts in this quarter, but there were 4 that we weren't able to fill at the first attempt. When this happens, the HR team work with the recruiting managers, and we've done this here to resolve the situation. So one of those posts has already been filled. We're making some changes to another, creating a trainee post, and others will be or are being re-advertised. We're moving forward with the recruitment and retention project. Sorry.
Yeah, can you just say the 2 posts that you're having difficulty with? Sorry to interrupt you as you're going along.
No, that's okay. And I need to move screen to get to that, unless Joe can read it off the report, which I don't have in front of me.
Yeah, the ones that were unfilled in the last quarter were the civil enforcement officer and parking the services, one of the customer service assistant roles, which is currently out again, and also a food safety role within environmental health.
So we continue to move forward with our recruitment refresh project. And as part of this, we've introduced a welcome payment to encourage recruitment and retention, particularly for the hard to fill posts. And we've also gathered feedback from our apprenticeship group and our senior managers feedback group. And we'll use this information to feed into the work we're doing in the project to improve the website and our processes. And I plan to provide further project updates in this information note in this meeting in the future. Turnover has appeared to have stabilised at 10% approximately, but there is potential given the market for this to increase. And so the team continue to focus on delivering the projects that will support this, such as the benefits review. Is there a question, Councillor Hunter?
Sorry, the mute wouldn't turn off. Yeah, it was just a point of interest, this welcome payment. What sort of financial inducement is that?
It's not a significant, let me just, Joe, do you have the details in front of you on the incentive?
We've said that we would fund it from sort of salary lag initially, wouldn't we? And yeah. I think up to 10% of starting salary, but paid over a period of 12 months. So it wouldn't be, they'd get it on day one, they'd get but first half within at the successful completion of a probation period, and the second half at the end of the first year.
Okay, thank you.
The posts also need to be hard to fill, so we need evidence that that's been the case, that there's been trouble recruiting, or that the post is in a well-known, nationally difficult post to fill. So it certainly wouldn't apply to all employees, all posts. So our apprentice scheme continues. The group attended a careers fair, and they visit local schools along with members of HR to promote apprenticeships and careers at the council. And we continue to see apprentices secure job roles following their apprenticeships, which is a really positive outcome for the council and for the individuals. 3.6 gives a short update on the national pay bargaining for 2022. And as it stands, the unions are consulting with their members on the final pay offer. We don't expect an outcome until October, late October, early November. We are working on our benefits review, which I mentioned earlier. The survey's been completed, and we are reviewing the data and researching options ahead of presenting that to leadership team. In terms of mental health and wellbeing, this continues to be a real focus for the HR team. And we have general activities that are ongoing, such as reminders for the support available for employees and our annual flu voucher scheme. But we've also launched a financial wellbeing intranet page for employees, which signposts support available. And we've launched a short-term salary advance scheme, which will support employees at difficult times. And this has already been taken up by employees. Our inclusion group continues to meet quarterly, and in June they met to discuss marriage, civil partnership, pregnancy, maternity, paternity, fertility and adoption. They had the pleasure of a guest speaker who was there to talk about their experiences and career journey. And the group have asked all employees to use photos of themselves on internal Microsoft profiles. And this is about raising awareness of diversity at the council, and ensuring that colleagues, especially our new colleagues, feel welcome, whilst many of us work remotely some of the time. And finally, COVID absences are reducing following the peak in January to March, and this feeds into our short-term absence levels, which are high. This appears to be related to minor infections, which we'd previously seen a reduction in. And obviously the HR team continue to support short-term and long-term absence cases. I'm happy to take any further questions.
Thank you very much. You said that a few employees had taken up the short-term loan salary advance type arrangement that we have in place. Roughly how many, and how confident are we that those staff are going to be able to continue to meet their own financial needs going forward? Are they likely to need to fall back on this again?
At the time of writing the report, there were 2 employees that had taken it up. I think when we issue the advance, we also issue advice around finances and managing finances, and that's to ensure that this is really looked at as a short-term solution, and we then encourage them to look at how they manage their finances in the future. We hope that we will be able to introduce some further support as part of the benefits review, but as I said, we are still looking into that.
Great, thank you. Claire?
Yes, I just wondered, looking at the absences, do we know if those are caused from long COVID at all?
I believe there is a case of long COVID. It's not a significant impact. So no, we haven't got a number of cases.
Okay. I mean, it's just that I know that we've got a couple of councillors that have got long COVID. And I was sitting next to one last night who was telling me all in great detail, the fact that it was having on him. Yeah. So, I mean, it kind of struck a chord because obviously COVID in itself, a lot of people having it and recovering, but there are those that then have got long COVID and just find the fatigue from it that they find in the morning, but it gets to lunchtime, they want a nap, and then because of the long COVID, and then they're fine again.
Yeah. And I think that people are aware of what long COVID would look like. And I think that employees feel comfortable to talk to their managers, and then the support is there from HR around what adjustments we can make and what we can do to help improve the situation for those individuals. But yes, we are aware of a case and we are supporting that.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any additional questions for Rebecca on the HR report? Nope, I'm seeing a few heads being shook. That's fine. In that case, that brings us on, I believe, to agenda item 6, which is a discussion on supporting women in the workplace. We've got a sort of helpful note here that's going through a couple of different issues and themes that we might sort of see and crop up against. And I guess there's a question for us where we look at what we're doing already to support our staff. Are there other things that we could and should be doing? So it's a discussion. So if anybody wants to start and express some views, disagree, now would be the time. Yes, Claire.
Yeah, Thanks, Elizabeth. I think, when we talked about this and having this paper come, I know I put endometriosis on it. I have to say I'm very pleased to see the information that's there. The only thing that when I was thinking about it and I read it through supporting women in the workplace, and I kind of have to say to Claire and I did relate back to my own experiences, that for a lot of women, well, I say a lot of women, but quite a few women do find that result of what I would call the women issues they have, that they end up having hysterectomies, which is not a very good or pleasant operation and does take an awful long time because it's such major surgery. And I just wondered whether or not that's something we perhaps also could just include in the paper, because again, the return to work after a hysterectomy is not an easy journey for some women.
No, it's not at all. I've had surgery in the past, and that was relatively minor, and that was an absolute nightmare to try and recover from, and not being able to walk for a long time. So I think it is sort of worth noting the impact and making sure that we have an appropriate approach. I can see that obviously we're not including these sort of sickness absences as ones that would trigger a HR process, which I think is incredibly beneficial, because there is nothing worse than having to fill out a return to work form that basically says you've triggered the Bradford factor and what are you going to do to prevent this from happening? And the only answer to that is not be a woman. That's not a position that any of our staff should be in, but it is a position that I think women across the workforce in this country find themselves in, because there's a rigid application and a failure to acknowledge that our bodies do all kinds of weird and wonderful things that we are not in control of at all. So if we could just sort of make sure that going forward, Rebecca, we've got that captured in the support, and we're applying the policies appropriately and giving people the support both pre and post, and also ensuring that we're referencing the employee assistance program as much as we possibly can, because the mental health toll of some of these physical conditions and the treatments that you need, and then having to come to terms with the fact that this is an area that's not talked about a lot, and we do feel othered and separate, and how do we have these conversations safely? There's a lot going on. One thing actually that is sort of absent from that support for our staff, and I know we have through the Inclusion Network previously had conversations, but it might be nice to have, another session through that network that's then sort of linked to, or there's a write-up from on the intranet around some of the health issues that women face in the workplace, and just give it that added bit of visibility if we could. Does anyone have any sort of further bits that they want to pick up on? I think the periods one for me is fine. That's relatively simple, and just I note that the boxes in the toilets in DCO now are being kept stocked, and it's just a plea to make sure that they're fully stocked at all times, because that again makes it normalizes having a period, which for a lot of women it doesn't feel normal, and that's something that we do need to challenge. Anybody other than me want to speak, please? I'm going to assume that Claire's got a previous hand up. Yeah.
No, I think the further point I think it's it's women being able to feel that they can come forward and talk. And it's not always easy if you've got a male manager. Sometimes you don't think that's going to be that sympathetic ear. But I think that's, I think recognising is for women, we are not alone in the workforce. There are so many women around us, and it is to talk. If you can't talk to your manager, talk to a colleague, talk to somebody, just so that if a woman is struggling, and I know I've been there, and I worked in a completely all-male environment, I have to say, very few women around. You are on your own, and you do need to know you've got that support, and that if you have to take a bit of time off, or you need to go home early because you're really feeling so rotten, it's not, you know, it's not a sin, you're not shirking work, it's just the way you feel. And it is because it's the way you feel, it's because you're suffering from something that men will never feel and never understand. And I'm saying that as a woman.
Yeah. Tom.
And I would very much like to concur with Councillor Strong's last comments. And I've only jumped in now just to say that I think this is an extremely important paper, and I'm very, very glad it's come to this committee today and is being applied across the council. So thank you very much for that.
That was very lovely. Thank you. Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to sort of kind of say, obviously, if a woman does have a male manager and doesn't feel comfortable talking to them about it, there are many female managers across the organisation that they could talk to, and also as part of the work of the inclusion group, people who attend the inclusion group have made themselves available, so that if people do have issues, obviously not just about being a woman or any of the protected characteristics, there are people available that they can talk to, and people in the inclusion group have made themselves available for that. So I think that's a good step across the council.
I agree. That's really positive. And if we can facilitate things like lunchtime chats on key topics, and obviously for those of us that are women and have had female managers, we know that sometimes we can be our own worst enemies. And it's also a case of making sure not just those men, I know I've got one waiting to speak and I'll bring Tony in a minute. It's not just about making sure that those men understand us women. It's about making sure that us women appreciate each other and lift each other up rather than tearing each other down. So I think I'd like to just make sure that managers at all levels are being kind. That's what it's about, isn't it, really? Tony.
Thank you. I managed an office with 8 women many years ago, and obviously at the time it was another world and another place, and effectively if they had a problem they dealt with each other to solve the problem and then told me what they were going to do about it. The thing is, though, that it did occur to me that a point of reference, I know you were talking about these groups and there's lots of people they can go to, but wouldn't it be sensible to have a point of reference, say 2 or 3 people highlighted within the organisation that women could go to if they had a problem?
I think that's quite a nice suggestion, actually. If there's some sort of, I don't know, like sisterhood type network, so that there is a safe space, the same as there might be for people with other protected characteristics, whether it's using an internal staff council member or a union rep, that kind of almost feels too formal. Sometimes you just need to go and have a person that you can have a conversation with that isn't necessarily your line manager or a colleague, because you want a little bit more than that. You don't want a full advocate, but you want somebody that can give you a little bit of that support. It's like, hey, I've got polycystic ovaries and they're playing up today and I'm really upset and I don't know who to talk to. Can I just scream into air? It's that kind of space. So almost like we've got mental health champions, so why can't we have women's champions as well? I think that's sort of the suggestion. I think Rebecca's making a note of that, so hopefully we can take that forward. That was a really, really good suggestion, Tony. I'm really glad that you've put that forward, because I think we would have, sometimes you're too close to issues and you don't see the wood for the trees, do you? Do I have anybody else that sort of wants to input on what can be a very big, very broad debate topic? Claire, are you going?
Well, I was just going to ask now, I mean, really, I say a really good paper, but I think, again, I mentioned about, like, just again, the result on this, some can be going for a hysterectomy. In my own case, I had, with the endometriosis, I had a number of times I was off work because I was having endometrial cysts removed, which again, it was not pleasant, not great on the recovery road. But this information, I mean, it's being made available. I mean, how is it going to be sort of taken around to the start to all members of staff?
I think that's a good question. Can I have an officer comment?
Yes, I think that there's been some good ideas from this conversation, and I wonder whether the loop back should be into inclusion group initially. I think that would be a really good place to start that conversation. The support that's already available, that's in the document, is regularly kind of reiterated to staff. So managers updates and message board, things like that. So that's being circulated on a regular basis. But I wonder whether there are some things here where we could look at doing more, and maybe inclusion group is the first place to have that discussion.
That wouldn't be terrible. There's also the intranet, and if we haven't got a women's forum or sort of women's page within the intranet yet, that's the ideal place to start building this so that it's permanently there. And then those members that are part of the inclusion group, if there's an internal women's network, they can put a link to that page in their email signatures, perhaps for internal emails, and it's constantly got visibility. So you've got that sort of trickle through permeation of the access to the knowledge, which will help. And I think it's also important to remember that we have counsellors who happen to be women who might find this sort of thing useful. I mean, I remember spending the budget in, was it 2018, in hospital because I was having ovarian cysts removed and feeling incredibly guilty for not being in the chamber and not doing my duty and my job. But I'd also had to fight incredibly hard to be in that place because the male doctors were not listening to me and didn't understand that if I'm in so much pain I can't walk, something is very, very seriously wrong. And I was right, they were wrong. But we need to make sure that we're recognising this council has staff and workers and contributors that come in all shapes and sizes, and we're giving everybody the same access to that kind of support. Claire.
And I know, and I'm harping back, but one of the things that used to work where we used to see when I was working was that the back of the door in the ladies' toilets is often a place that you can get attention to women, and you just put, again, a small, just a piece of paper that's been printed or is just stuck on the door and that says, "Don't forget you're not alone. Women's support." You can read it. And I know a lot of our staff don't come into the office, but that's always been a space that is women's space, and you can always get attention putting something on the back of the door because that's always there to be read, she says.
It is. My workplace has a series of different employee support posters sort of dealing with mental health and domestic abuse issues, because that's very, very relevant to the staff that work there. I mean, if you don't want to have a poster because you want to keep changing them, the COVID ones need changing. We need something new now, please. You don't have to have a poster. You can have a sticker that's, permanent, and then you can still use the posters for ever evolving content, internal comms dictates. But
yeah, I mean, we used, like you say, when I was going to work, they used to use it, and they used to change from time to time. So if it was breast awareness, there'd be something up there reminding women, you need to self-check yourself. If it was bowel cancer or awareness, again, there were simple things that they would tell you about what to think about, what to look about. And again, I think, for health issues, it's a good way to capture.
Yeah, it's excellent. Actually, mentioning breast awareness, Claire, that's something that's not sort of popped up on that document where we've been looking at the issues. We've been looking mostly at menstrual cycle type issues here, but I think breast awareness and also information around fibrous tissue in the breast, which isn't necessarily cancerous, is important, because a woman can find a lump or have a fibroid removed, and that can trigger and cause all kinds of mental stress. But it's not cancer. It's okay. Everybody has lumpy boobs from time to time, and that's a conversation that we don't have. So could we try and sort of capture some stuff around that? And just like men need to check themselves, we really need to be better at checking ourselves and understanding our bodies too.
Well, well, I was going to say men's health issues, a whole different sheet of paper. Where do we start? I mean, there's a lot on there as well that men know.
There is a great amount of that. And I think a lot of the stuff that we're saying here, although we're looking at one particular gender, it does cross over and it does apply to men as well. And I don't want us to be in a place where we're overselling women and making men feel like they're excluded either, because I mean, gosh, I think the majority of us on this call know what it feels like to come second when it's down to specific, unique, personal, gender-based health issues. So let's not inflict that on anybody else. So I think there's potentially another piece of work there, and that's before we get into specific men's mental health needs as well, which are incredibly vast. That's almost taking me into topics for future meetings though, so I shall stop. Does anybody else want to say anything else about women that is relevant to the discussion paper? No. Okay. So I think there's we've thrown a lot at you. There's a lot of thoughts there, Rebecca, but hopefully you can come out with something cohesive, and there were some action points, and we can start to just create a bit more of a friendly, supportive environment for women within the council. Okay, in that case, I shall move us on to agenda item 7, which are the discussion topics for future meetings. As always, we've got a list of the past discussion topics and also some suggested discussion topics looking forward. Does anybody sort of want to kick off with their ideas and suggestions? We don't just have to have one discussion topic. We could pick a couple depending on how meaty we think that they might be. And if there isn't something on the list that you'd want to see, so for example, men's health, men's mental health isn't on there, then feel free to suggest that as well. I'll give you a minute. Okay, while people are thinking, I'm going to carry a theme on. Rebecca, thinking about what we've said on the women's health stuff and what I've indicated, can you sort of check and make sure that our men's health resources and support is mirroring the general sort of theme and direction that we've expressed in this group, so that we're treating both genders equally here? But then also, I think, especially given we are going to be meeting in the more depressing part of the year, I'd like to see a discussion paper on men's mental health and how we are sort of working with the different age groups that we've got in the council to provide access to appropriate support and understanding. And perhaps it might also be worth including within that, if relevant to our workforce, bits on support with relationships / abusive relationships and bereavement as well, because those can really affect, I think those really do hit men quite hard, especially the domestic abuse side of things. There's added baggage because of preconceptions about people's gender, I think, that go along there. Tony.
Thank you. You touched on it earlier, and I was sitting here thinking about major surgery or surgery in general, male or female. I think one of the things that goes through people's minds, especially in the workplace, is my job safe? I'm going to be off work for weeks. I don't know how it's going to affect me. I wondered if we had something in place that actually they were already aware before they went into hospital, that there was a supportive organisation behind them when they actually came out. Because obviously, whether it's male or female, these things can go on for a great period of time. And I think job security, especially more so now than ever before, people are really worried if suddenly their money's going to be reduced, all sorts of things it's going to affect, their mortgage, lifestyle, their family. I mean, it would be a good thing. And I can remember when I worked for a company called Hanson, they were quite forward thinking with this one. Anybody that was going to major surgery, they actually had a little meeting with them before they left, if they were able, of course. They had a little meeting with them to actually go through things and actually see how they could help and what they could do.
Yeah. Rebecca, are you going to talk to us about occupational health, income protection, insurance, and all of that?
Yep. Yep. Long-term sick policy, sick pay, occupational health, employee assistance program. We've got all of that kind of stuff in place. We could absolutely have a discussion on it, but it's something that is a fundamental piece of work that our business partners do to support managers on a day-to-day basis.
I think maybe can we have it as a sort of information note primarily, just so that members are aware, and that could even be circulated to people that are present today, you know, outside of the meeting, so that we're firstly informed, and then also it might be worth just reflecting on how we're implementing and how we're communicating that, and making sure that managers are empowered to have those supportive conversations. Because I think like as Tony's indicated, it's not just about having the nuts and bolts in place, it's about having the compassion to help somebody through what can be a really difficult and stressful journey for them as well. So we've got to have the human side of human resource present. Lovely. So we've got sort of a couple of potential bits. Was there anything that jumped out at other people as something that we wanted to look at next time? Tom?
So I think we've potentially got enough for next time, but further down the line, I'd certainly like to see the apprenticeships and opportunities for young people being discussed here as well.
Okay. I think we might be able to do a couple. Can you have a look at prepping that for next time as well, Rebecca? And if there is sort of room and space, because we've got through most things in less than an hour today. So if there is space, we could have that conversation around men's health and sense check where we are with stuff. We could have any kind of conversation that we need to have based on the benefits that we're providing to staff when they're away, long-term sick, and also what any feedback or indication on the soft skills side of supporting staff in that area is, which hopefully should be quite a short chat. And then I think that gives us enough space possibly to look at a third, which might be the apprenticeship one, or possibly something that Claire's going to give me.
No, I was interested on the apprenticeship and whether or not, not that I've seen it for a while, just doing some sort of staff profiling of some of the apprenticeships that we've had that have stayed on, but ones that have perhaps not stayed on and not that have been here a couple of years, but have maybe stayed on even longer than that, because I know that there are some that started work in the council as apprenticeships. But there was only one thing again with this, the work life and the balance and people coming back into the office. And there was a comment in one of the reports about people not cleaning their desks, which I thought was a bit fundamental. And I just wanted to know, what actions can we actually try to encourage employees, if they've come in and used a desk, to clean the desk? And is it still a problem? It was just more a question. I forgot to ask it on when I was when we were reviewing the reports.
Does any officer that's been in the building want to comment on the desk cleaning issue? Otherwise, I might say words.
I was going to talk about something else, but I'll talk about that to start with. I haven't had any more complaints about it, and they do come to me. So I think it is resolved. I did send a reminder to everyone to reiterate the importance of it. Hopefully that has had a desired effect. I do go in occasionally, and I'm going to go in more and more, so I will keep an eye on it personally as well, just to make sure those cloths are coming out when people leave, and they'll give me a good wipe down. I was just going to ask, obviously you've asked quite a few topics, so I'm sure we can fit into the agenda in terms of time of the meeting. Just sort of say, obviously there is some work, as sort of preparation for the HR team for all these topics. Are you happy for it to sort of be quite light touch in terms of that prep, and therefore be quite a sort of summary introduction to what actually the focus of the conversation here, to be sort of a discussion rather than sort of a long paper? Is that okay in terms of how we approach it? Just sort of manage the workload as well as promote discussion.
Yeah, no, it absolutely doesn't need to be a long paper. This isn't one of those full council-esque formal or regulatory meetings. It's a space for us to come together, do a little bit of internal scrutiny, but also support each other, I think, as well. So, you know, give us the information so that we're able to have a discussion. You know, this is the issue, or this is what we're already doing. This is some feedback that we've had from staff through the forums over X period of time, you know, and then we can have a discussion. We might come up with action points, or we might not come up with action points. It depends how we feel. And I think it's one of those potentially where if you show us less initially, we might get more out of the discussion and the conversation that we have, especially with like the universal issues like health and gender and any other protected characteristic we might consider in future. The apprenticeship one we might want a little bit more on, but Claire's point about profiling, that's something that you can take forward now, and you can, you know, do an intranet story, you can do something in Insight. That doesn't have to wait and come back to this space, does it? And actually it's going to be much more effective if it just gets done. And I can reliably inform you all that employees not cleaning their desks is universal to pretty much every workplace at the moment. Does anybody else have anything at all that they wish to raise on those future topics? No, and we've not overburdened. That's a leading question. I won't do a leading question. Do you feel that you've got an appropriate amount of work to do, Rebecca?
Yes, if we can do the light touch for the discussion papers, I think that will work, yes.
Perfect. Okay, so then, I have been notified of no other business, and in fact any other business isn't an item on this agenda, so I don't need to ask if anyone has any, unless anybody has any other business that they desperately need to raise here and now. Got a wall of blank faces. Lovely. In that case, everyone, thank you very much for your time this morning. Enjoy what looks like a relatively grey day outside, and I'm sure I'll see some of you tomorrow.